Hi friends, the Watch Talk crew is back. Today we've got a great debate. Which Rolex bracelet reigns supreme? Come join our discussion. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all of our latest video content. All right, you guys, so great to see you as always. Now, before we get into our hot little debate, I've got to ask, what are you wearing on your wrist today, Justin?
I got something nice today.
I
went new, yes. Okay, so new GMT. I know this isn't what this show's about, but I want to talk about the watch for a second. I love this watch. I'm very divided on it. The green and black, amazing.
Love it.
I can't get over the left hand part. I mean, I wear my watch on my left hand.
Still a little weird.
It's, you know, I don't know if I really just don't like it or it's just different, and I don't like the fact that it's different, and maybe it'll grow on me. I'm hung up on it a little bit, but I mean, the watch, the Jubilee's great, and the green and black I think is amazing.
It looks lovely
on you. It's really nice. Yeah.
Looks great. Ripley, what are you wearing today?
Well, double wristing. I mean, I'm wearing the Tudor Pelagos FXD. But as it is not a Rolex and does not have a bracelet, I figured that could not be further from the brief, so I am wearing also my palm dial.
You knew the assignment.
Okay. Yeah, so a Rolex on a bracelet and a Tudor not on a bracelet. How about yourself?
All right, well, I've got a great Rolex Cellini. This is on a leather bracelet today, so it does kind of fit the brief, and you know I love Cellinis, so
looks
enjoy.
Good. Yeah.
As always, you guys, what are you wearing? We definitely want to know. Be sure to let us know in the comments what your wrist check is while you're watching. So as I mentioned, we're having a nice little face-off again. We haven't done one in a while. The crew's back together. We got to do it.
Yes.
So instead of bringing a topic to the table individually, we're doing one overarching topic. Which Rolex bracelet do you like the most? We've got a variety, 6 different options to kind of choose from. Before we get into our sort of details, Ripley, can you tell us a little bit about the history of each of these?
So I guess the logical place to start would be the Oyster Bracelet, what you see on the sub here, you see on my Datejust here. It's probably, classic, quintessential Rolex. It's probably the bracelet that first comes to mind when you think of Rolex, but it's oddly actually not Rolex's very first in-house bracelet. That honor would go to the Jubilee, which was introduced, as the name suggests, Jubilee, for the Jubilee anniversary of Rolex Company in the Datejust 1945. A couple years later was actually when you see the Rolex Oyster Bracelet in its proper form come to be, although kind of earlier iterations of like the Gayfer Bonclip bracelet were used before that. Those are Rolex's probably two most famous designs, but then you get to the present, which appeared in '56 for the Day-Date collection, only crafted from precious metals, so gold or platinum, and it's kind of, I like to describe it as a mix between the Oyster and the Jubilee. You get the rounded links of the Jubilee, but you get the 3-link design of the Oyster, and it's
size-wise is kind of in between. It's bigger than the Jubilee, but not as big as the Oyster, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, and it's Rolex's most exclusive, so it's really only fitted to the Day-Date 40 and 36, as well as Datejust models from the mid-size and Lady Datejust size, so 28, 26, and 31. But those are only going to be on your in solid gold execution. So if you get like your little 31 mil President, it's solid gold version. It's not a steel one because it's only in precious metals. Now, moving up the food chain, I guess we have the Pearlmaster bracelet, which is right here. Pearlmaster came out in '92. Bracelet came along with it. It's essentially just a Datejust with this fancy bracelet, and it's Rolex's jewelry bracelet. Pearlmaster has since been discontinued recently, but as you can tell, it's kind of a weird design that isn't either here nor there. It almost looks like someone really went ham and over polished like an AP bracelet or something. It's kind of almost got those oyster quartz vibes with like the 2 sort of striping links, but it's sort of its own thing. Rounded links.
Kind of the most different as well, right? You know, we talk about the Jubilee and the Oyster being kind of similar. The presidents in between, they all kind of live in the same family, and then the Pearlmaster is kind of outside.
Yeah, really trying to do something different, and kind of one of the first modern Rolex bracelets. You know, look at the other stuff, 50s, 40s, and then this we're going up into the 90s. Moving on to the far other end, a leather bracelet. We can just call that a strap for all intents and purposes. I know Rolex likes to call everything a bracelet, but you know, leather. This was the first thing. So 1925, 1926, in the 20s, when watches and Rolex, and before you even really get into wristwatches, you know, pocket watch days, making that transition, leather was one of the first materials to mount something to your wrist. We obviously didn't have rubber, ballistic, nylon, or all of that stuff. So, you know, that was the original strap material, and it's really not used anymore outside of the Cellini collection, and now the Cellini is just one model. So models like this Daytona, the Datejusts, the Day Dates, even the Sky Dwellers that used to be factory fitted with leather straps, they've now kind of phased those out for either Oysterflex or just standard metal bracelets. And then lastly, we've got the Oysterflex bracelet, which is Rolex's rubber strap, although it has a metal core. Honestly, one of the
really great.
Yeah, very comfy. Only found on solid gold models, yellow, white, or rose. Even though it's like Rolex's most sporty style of bracelet, and it kind of has been the replacement for the leather strap. So it's still only on the solid gold models. If you get it on a Daytona, it even has the same little lug hoods there to fill the gap. But it is the only non-metal, even though it has a metal core, but the only the non-metal option currently available. And obviously compared to leather, which no matter how careful you are, it will eventually kind of get funky. You know, it's elastomer and metal, so you can easily wash it off, and it promises better longevity. So
that was a great overview.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's crazy to see sort of the progression of all of these, obviously through time, but also as the wearers have had some aspect of feedback to kind of see new options.
And all these straps are different, right? They fit different watches, they fit different circumstances, they fit different uses. But that's not what we're talking about today, right? Today, we're picking one. Yeah. And it's hard to do.
We're not speaking to variety in your watch box. We are speaking to you choose one, you wear one forever.
And it has to be independent of the watches. So you might love, it's got to be just the bracelet. You can't be the bracelet on this watch, but if it's this model, this one, categorically,
it's very black and white.
So who's making it known first?
You want to start, or you want me to start, Ripley?
I'm happy to go first.
Go for it. I want to know.
For me, it's got to be the Oyster. I mean, so
classic.
I look at the watches I own, and the only Jubilee I bought was for my father. Everything I own from Rolex is on an Oyster of some variety. I find it's dressy enough that I mean, rarely this is about as dressed up as I get. So I don't need anything really resplendent. And if I do, I might just go for something very different, like a leather strap and some very classic dress watch. But if we're talking bracelets, I feel like it's probably for me the most versatile, which is kind of the watch I generally gravitate towards, sports watches. I just couldn't really pull off the Pearlmaster. I don't have the bankroll to do the President, and the Jubilee's just a little bit delicate for my taste, although I love it from a historical standpoint. But for me, it's got to be the Oyster. It's just, when I think of a Rolex, it's going to be something on an Oyster.
It sure looks great on your wrist, so it's kind of easy to see why that would be your option.
I like the Oyster. It's really versatile. It's masculine. To me, it's a little tougher, for a lack of a better word, right? I mean, it's
those
bigger
edges,
and
it really helps.
And it's a great choice, like you said. It's you know, it works on everything, and it's
I'm sensing you're going in a different direction.
So okay,
do tell.
Yes, I am going in a different direction, and I actually like all of these. Outside the Pearlmaster, I don't really like the Pearlmaster so much. That may just be, you know, those watches don't resonate with my style as much. If they did, or if I was a lady that were, you know, those watches live, I might feel different about it. But
it's very much of a sauerkraut thing. If it's your speed, you're gonna love it. But if it's definitely not everyone.
We're speaking to the German here now.
So I like outside the Pearlmaster. I think they're all great, and it's just really tough to choose just one. But I am going to go in a different direction, and I'm going to say the Jubilee. If you ask me my favorite bracelet, I would probably agree with you, Ripley. I think the Oyster would be my favorite. But if I have to pick one, and I have to pick only one, and the watch doesn't matter, I think this is where the Jubilee gains some extra points over the Oyster. I'm going with the Jubilee. I think it's a little more versatile. I think it can go kind of dressy and also sporty, where, Ripley, you're right, I think it's a little more masculine on the Oyster. I think just the Jubilee might be a little bit more well-rounded. A perfect example right on the sport watch I'm wearing right now.
Great. I was going to ask, do you have a preferred sort of metal preference here?
So I love stainless steel, and I've said this before, I love the solid gold Datejust on a Jubilee. I think that is such a gorgeous watch, and I think it's overlooked a lot. You know, you think solid gold, President Day Date, right? That's right where you go to. And I also think it's a little different to see that solid gold Jubilee, which you don't see that often. It's usually a two-tone or a stainless, or if you see the solid gold, you see it in the President bracelet. So I love that. So anyway, and especially the solid. The solid link, the new Jubilees are amazing. We get to the older ones, I'm a little less impressed. You know, we get some of the hollow links, and they're a little more stretchy and whatever. The new ones are just so clean and so versatile that if you twist my arm, which we're doing, I'm gonna go with the Jubilee.
Right.
Yeah, the solid gold Jubilee, it's interesting you bring it up because when the Datejust first came out in 45, it was originally a solid gold watch on the Jubilee. That was the original vision for it. So it's interesting that that's the one that speaks to you most because that was the original concept for it. The two-tone, all that was a more recent convention, but it's interesting that you're most attracted to what was the original archetype vision.
You both have kind of a historically rooted sort of choice here, which I think is great.
So it sounds like you don't.
I was going to say, I'm really curious to see what you're going with here.
Just teed it up for all those people out there that are feeling a little different. So I will be honest, when I started in luxury watches, almost 3 years ago, the Jubilee was my best friend. I loved it. I had an affinity for it. It was that dressy, component to the Oyster, and especially learning watches and trying to understand which one do you want to choose, especially from a GMT standpoint. Oh my gosh, the Batman on an Oyster versus a Jubilee was like the craziest thing for me to kind of learn. So I felt that the Jubilee was sort of that gateway to just genuinely falling in love with the president. I love that bracelet. I do like the sort of masculine play on the Jubilee, but I love a fluted bezel always. So a fluted Jubilee was my favorite thing. Seeing that on a president bracelet, mind blown. Like, I don't think there's much better to it. It's no secret that I am definitely a precious metal fan, especially for yellow gold. So, I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. Even on the ladies is what I really like. The hidden sort of crown clasp is just, it fits what I would be looking for from a luxury watch standpoint the most. I will add one extra caveat that I have been very impressed with the wearability of the Oysterflex. So as much as like a rubber strap is not for me, I really like the Oysterflex as well. So in the hierarchy of things, I'm definitely #1, tip top, a president fan.
I love the Oysterflex as well. I think my biggest struggle, and again, I think this is me just not playing by my own rules here and having a hard time separating it from the watches attached to it, but I think I would much prefer the Oysterflex if it was on a stainless steel watch and was less expensive. I think for me, my biggest struggle is I'm looking at that Yacht 42 in solid white gold and the retail price attached to it, and to me, it's just still on a rubber strap, and it seems like such an expensive rubber strap. Objectively, it's fantastic, but I feel like it costs so much at that price point. Give me the solid gold bracelet, just give me the 40 mil president and I'll be happy.
I agree. I want to see it on a Sea Dweller. Right? Ooh. It's so utilitarian, rubber dive watches.
Like no date sub.
Yes.
It makes so much sense.
Love it. But the strap itself, you're right, I've worn it. It's really comfortable. There's a lot of engineering that goes into it. Hats off to Rolex because, we talk about rubber straps. There's a big range of how they fit and wear and all that. And Rolex is top notch.
Here's one thing where it loses out for me, and it's same with the leather. It's not user adjustable. So with all the metal link bracelets, you can take a screwdriver, you can have it sized, it can fit your wrist, you can even use the clasp extended. The Oysterflex is only useful if it already fits your wrist as far as each length of the side, and then you can use the glide lock to fine tailor it. For me, it kind of loses some points because it has to already fit your wrist. If you just pick one up,
it's a little less convenient than it could be.
Yeah, and they are expensive to replace.
Yes, and they're expensive to replace.
So I want to like it more than I do, but apples to apples, I could have a watch that fitted with either. Maybe a solid gold Oyster. I'll just split the difference at that point.
I like the president choice.
Thanks.
It's kind of the best of both worlds, right?
It is.
It's it has the Jubilee feel, but still retains some of the kind of larger size and the little more statement of the Oyster, and also being a precious metal, exclusively precious metal bracelet. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's a lot of what you wear. You gravitate towards those watches and those colors and styles. So I think it's a great fit. I think it's a great choice.
I know. I'm surprised at how much the watches that we each chose, thankfully something different, fits our personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, the president's cool because there's no budget way to get it. You can get an Oyster bracelet on Rolex's least expensive model. You can get a full steel Jubilee bracelet, only costs a couple $100 additional at retail. Right. There is no way to get yourself a president bracelet unless you're buying a solid 18-karat watch. And I mean, the same goes for the Oysterflex, but one looks quite a bit more impressive than the other.
Well, these are just our votes, you guys. So as always, please let us know where you weigh in on this topic. You've got 6 options to choose from, and if you want to be a rebel and tell us a different brand, go for it. We like to hear that too. But specifically speaking to Rolex, let us know which bracelet you guys are choosing in the comments. So as always, guys, a hearty discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your opinions. Until next time, you guys, be well.